The critic. I mean, yes. But interaction I will get you enjoyed it. So yeah, then I would try to fix it.
Yeah, but it depends. Some did. Like,
Here we're good. Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's gonna be the.
You guys just really nailed it.
Where there's one that's like a.
And you see when I explain it, like, yeah,
My daughter. She's down here. Yeah, that's not fun. My son is. Yeah. So, you can be so excited.
And then like, yeah, one time, I'm really happy.
Yeah. Yeah, we come back on the fish. Yeah, this is my own room. This is how I want to go and I thought.
This
Stop.
Hey, so folks, why don't you come on down and take a seat? Plenty of seats up front for anybody standing in the back. Yeah, feel free to come on down. It's not a bother. Welcome, everyone, to the next edition of the spring lecture series. My name is Michael Edsbon. I'm the assistant director of the graduate architecture program. It's great to see you. We have a very special event today, not just any lecture, but the Craig and Mimi Spangler lecture. And I'll tell you a little bit more about why that's such a special thing. You see our land acknowledgement, and I've kept that up so that you all can read that. For the students in the room right now, you can scan this QR code to indicate your attendance here today. I'll leave that up for just 1 second. And while I do, I'll also give a shout out to AIA Potomac Valley, our perennial supporters in events like this and helping to support our professional architects get continuing education credits for events like this one. So as usual, thank you so much to them. So let me tell you a bit about the Craig and Mimi Spangler lecture. First of all, Craig and Mimi Spangler, thank you so much for being here. This is an annual lecture that's endowed by Craig and Mimi Spangler since 2014. Since 2023, the Spangler Lecture has featured international and emerging practitioners. The Spangler guests typically visit for several days where they conduct not only a public lecture like the one you're about to enjoy, but they're also embedded in various studios and courses. In fact, our guest has already spent time in Architecture 408 this afternoon. She'll be spending time in a class tomorrow and further studios on Friday as well. So that's one of the things that really makes this event special is that the guest is really kind of embedded in our community for several days and has many, many touch points with our students over time. And just a note, in 2023, we had Kabir Kondakar and Suhaili Farzana from Co-Creation Architects, emerging architects from Bangladesh. They were recent winners of the Aga Khan Award in architecture. So that was fantastic to have them here for several days. Last year, we had Elena Tudela from the Office for Resilient Architecture. emerging architect based in Mexico City. So that was another great lecture and another great day from that person as well. And we are so fortunate now to have Aziza Chaouni visiting from Aziza Chaouni Projects. She's also teaches in Switzerland. She's going to be giving her lecture called Designing with Scarcity in Africa. And to give a proper introduction to Aziza, I'm going to hand the microphone over to Michelle Lampricos. Aziza will be joining Michelle in her seminar course tomorrow. And so we thought it'd be fitting. They also know each other from professional circles. And so we thought it'd be fitting for Michelle to give the introduction. So if you wouldn't mind.
Thanks, Michael. It is great pleasure to introduce Aziza Chaouni and to reconnect after all this time. She is the founding principal of the design practice Aziza Chaouni Projects, based in Fez, Morocco, and an assistant professor of architecture at the École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne, where she directs a really interesting lab. Look forward to hearing more about it. The North-South Lab for Sustainable Construction and Conservation. She's rehabilitated several heritage buildings, including the Qarawiyyin Library, the oldest library in the Middle East. And she's responsible for construction management plans for the Sidi Harazim Thermal Bath Complex and for the International Fair of Dakar, both supported by the Getty Foundation. She's collaborating with the World Monuments Fund on the Future of Ontario Place project and the rehabilitation of the oldest university in West Africa, Old Forna Bay College in Freetown, Sierra Leone. Aziza Chaouni's design work has been recognized with top awards for both the global and regional Africa and Middle East competition from the Wholesome Foundation for Sustainable Construction, the Architectural League of New York Young Architects Award, the Environmental Design Research Association Great Places Award, the American Society of Landscape Architects Design Awards, and the ACSA Collaboration Award, among others. Her work has been published and exhibited internationally, including at the International Architecture Biennale in Rotterdam, Index Designed to Improve Life in Copenhagen, the United Nations Human Settlements Program, World Urban Forum, the Venice Architecture Biennale, and the Louisiana Museum of Modern Art in Copenhagen. She holds a Master's of Architecture with distinction from the Harvard Graduate School of Design and a Bachelor of Science with honors in Civil Engineering from Columbia University. So please join me in welcoming Aziza.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Thank you so much, Michelle, and then thank you so much, Michael. I am delighted to be back here at the University of Maryland, and I'm also delighted to see some old friends and some new friends. I would like to thank very dearly Craig and Mimi that I just met for their support of this lecture and for the opportunity to be here among you today. My work theorizes, represents, and speculates about and implements sustainable construction strategies in the Global South, with an emphasis on maximizing their social and environmental impact. Specifically, I am interested in, one, the rehabilitation and reuse of heritage buildings, including 20th century heritage, very often dismissed and little studied in the Global South. And two, of integrative design solutions for construction in arid regions, which are facing unprecedented pressures due to climate change. Over the years, these two focused research streams have increasingly centered on the African continent and have remained intimately interconnected, both aiming to address various conditions of scarcity, a theme with the recent resurgence in architectural discourse. In the regions where I operate, manifold scarcities abound. Materials, water, food, landscapes, public infrastructure, public space, financing, governance, arable lands expertise, and so forth. These conditions of scarcity are further exacerbated by climate change nefarious effects, such as long droughts, floods, and wildfires, as well as a post-colonial condition that compounds models of social injustice and unequal distribution of resources. You may wonder what makes these seemingly doomed environments fertile ground for research and practice with potential global implications. In addition to the ethical urgency of developing locally rooted architectural solutions for this built environment, whether booming urban centers or disappearing oasis villages in the Sahara, arid contexts stimulate new ways of thinking, designing, collaborating, forging solidarities, and engaging with stakeholders, thereby crafting novel models for sustainable architectural practices. Such scarce contexts also urge us to critically reevaluate the abundance and endless growth paradigms embedded in our capitalist economies. The full potential of working in and investigating scarce contexts is unleashed when we challenge the common conceptualization of scarcity, which typically focuses on tangible shortages defined as situations where demand continuously outstrips supply, leading to progressively dwindling reserves. Instead, we should consider resources not as isolated commodities, but as part of a complex social, economic, political, and environmental ecosystem. Professor Jeremy Till aptly reminds us that the creative challenge for our profession today is not merely to reorganize our limited resources, but to design new processes that redirect and optimize these flows, altering our value system and behaviors. This approach involves understanding resources within their larger context and expanding our agency as architects to reconfigure them. If I use the lens of scarcity to present my work today, it is not simply to remind everyone of the challenge facing our planet and profession, but to introduce an interesting channel of exchange between the global North and global South. Through this channel, knowledge transfer can flow in both directions, enriching new avenues for mutually beneficial research on sustainable construction. For instance, the academic environments of my past homes, the University of Toronto and Harvard, and my current home, EPFL, along with my experience working with Renzo Piano, my office experience, and my dual training as an architect and civil engineer, have allowed me to develop techniques and methods specific to contexts in the global South, which then came to inform other sites and pedagogies back in the global North. I firmly believe that some of the solutions for a sustainable tomorrow will be found as much in such cross-fertilization as in interdisciplinary collaboration. My extensive practical and teaching experience around the globe, extending from New Caledonia, Australia, North America, Brazil, to the Middle East and Africa, has allowed me not only to erect and rehabilitate a series of buildings, but also to build solid and lasting relationships with a wide network of governmental, academic, and civil society institutions. This network forms a solid base for continuing such pursuit at EPFL, whose rigorous academic environment can only amplify its impact on a global scale. Let me illustrate this process further through my two research streams. The first one, sustainable design in arid climates. My interest in arid climates stems from a postgraduate year-long grant trip throughout the Sahara Desert supported by the Harvard Appleton Fellowship, which I describe in the 2024 October issue of Architectural Review dedicated to deserts. I specifically researched architectures of ecotourism in the Sahara as they attempted to reimagine vernacular models to suit today's contemporary needs, while respecting their environment and integrating local communities. I experienced firsthand the relative nature of scarcity. What is scarce to us is not to nomadic tribes who can thrive with little water and a simple mobile shelter made out of camel hair. I discovered means used to address a scarcity that was exponentially expanding before my very eyes, derived from both traditional techniques like water catchment through the old Qatar channels or the communally managed ancestral oasis irrigation system, and the new ingenious ones like the subterranean water treatment wetland of Adrel Amelal in Siwa, Egypt. This research journey led me to obtain the Aga Khan Fellowship at Harvard, where I formalized my fieldwork, further investigating the theme of desert tourism globally, taught courses on the topic, organized an exhibition, international conference, and published 2 books in collaboration with Virginie Picon-Lefebvre. This Saharan trip also led to the creation of the Designing Ecological Tourism Lab at the University of Toronto, which offered numerous applied research seminars and studios in Morocco, Jordan, and Australia, and inspired journal articles and a book of our research on the creation of a newly protected area called Shobak in Jordan, located north of Petra. Throughout the studios and seminars, students addressed the extreme scarcity of natural resources, materials, and funds, leading them to think across scales and in an integrated manner in which landscape, infrastructure, and architecture were apprehended as one system. Working hand in hand with partner institutions and school has been key. And also with sociologists, ethnographers prior to site visits. Students had the opportunity to continue working on their project as researchers over the summer terms, returning to the site for more fieldwork and compiling research data, a pedagogical model that I was the first to develop at the Daniels faculty at the University of Toronto. Currently, I am continuing both this pedagogical model and my 2 main streams of research at my new academic home, the École Polytechnique Fédérale of Lausanne, or for short, EPFL, that I joined in January 2026 after 18 years at the University of Toronto. I specifically moved there to establish a funded lab dedicated to advancing sustainable construction and heritage conservation through equitable collaboration between the global North and South. Its research is rooted in design, prototyping, and implementation, bridging academic inquiry with practical application. Rather than remaining in the realm of speculation, the Sono Lab tests new models of building and conservation in real context across the global South, ensuring that architecture research is both transformative and directly impactful. In addition, Sono positions at its very core South-North knowledge exchange as a mutually beneficial process. The lab is housed in the Smart Living Lab, one of EPFL's 4 annex campuses dedicated to sustainable construction. And the lab gathers professors working on different facets of sustainable construction from EPFL and 2 other schools based in Fribourg, making it a fertile ground for collaboration. The Smart Living Lab is housed in a reused beer factory and has a large workshop ideal for 1-to-1 scale prototyping. And a new timber building is currently under construction that will soon house our offices. This building is designed to be a research infrastructure. It has changeable facade systems and roof components, but is also filled with sensors. So now I'm going to share with you a few projects that illustrate my first stream of research, which is working in arid regions. In the Shobak project that you can see here, the Designing Ecological Tourism Lab at the University of Toronto collaborated with the Royal Society of Conservation of Nature, RSCN, an NGO managing all national parks in Jordan to create a new type of arid protected area. After past protectionist approaches failed in Shobak, we proposed that in the first phase, users, rather than a higher authority, become the stewards of the park. To do so, we expanded RSCN's integrated ecological management approach, which offers a holistic manner to integrate all components of the ecosystem, air, soil, water, and organisms, including humans, and ecosystem functions in a broad perspective that encompasses environmental, social, and economic dimensions. This included architectural and landscape dimensions, strategies for both the protection of fauna and flora and the economic development of local populations, most of whom are semi-nomadic herders and foragers. We propose a 2-phase master plan with 3 types of actions: build, upgrade, and organize. In phase 1, all actions were located in the protected area buffer zone in order to empower locals to become actors of the park safeguarding, while in phase 2, we reinforced low-impact ecotourism infrastructure and the protective environmental measures inside the park. The architectural interventions were designed to be autonomous in water and energy and have a low carbon footprint, favoring adaptive reuse, such as the reuse of this abandoned stone village that you can see here as an eco-lodge, and a mobile lightweight structures such as the seasonal modular camp, which uses a steel structure and camel hair fabric. Similarly, in Morocco, the NCSAR Research Project aimed to create a new protected area in the southeast in a remote, fragile, arid zone where the endangered mouflon sheep lives. We led this project with the Moroccan Ministry of Tourism. And working with RSCN that we brought with us from Jordan and planner ecologist Professor Nina Mary Lister as consultants and our sponsor, the Moroccan Ministry of Tourism, we adopted a similar integrated method as in Shobak, in which a menu of guidelines supports the overall master plan and its different zones. So it's like technically a Chinese menu. The main stakeholders being nomadic and semi-nomadic Beniguil tribes, we propose upgrading their existing housing and their facilities to host tourists and to better also their living conditions, following careful study of their daily routines and their changing lifestyles and their existing dwellings. So here, for instance, our analysis of an existing nomadic dwelling, and here our analysis of a typical semi-nomadic dwelling. Then, through collaborative workshops, we could design their new dwellings using local materials. So you can see here the nomadic dwelling upgrade in which we updated the existing dwelling kitchen, bathroom, and added a new multifunctional room that you can see here in green. And you can see here the view of this new room. And here is the semi-permanent dwelling in which we repaired and extended the existing rammed earth walls, and we also added new walls and added camel hair fabric for the roofs. And you can see here a view of that dwelling. So in my own practice, Aziza Chaouni project, the Abainu Oasis Tourism Master Plan, embodies many of the principles developed in my own academic research. The first integrated ecotourism plan for an entire oasis in Morocco, the project deals with the Saharan village and its oasis, both severely damaged by extreme events caused by climate change that you can see here, flooding, wildfires, etc. We propose to restructure its productive land, its thermal spring, and its derelict village, turning them into a new well-being destination, mainly geared towards locals and Moroccan tourists, focusing on circular economy, agritourism, and thermalism. Following 6 months of consultation, workshops, and interviews with the villagers and stakeholders, we could develop a vision where the oasis permaculture is revived thanks to the thermal spring reuse of water, which has proven to be beneficial to the existing olive trees and palm groves. The oasis is used beyond its agricultural function and becomes the backdrop for a series of public spaces such as plazas, picnic areas, and playgrounds. Over time, the oasis and surrounding ecosystem regeneration is projected to drastically improve the thermal comfort of the village and its public spaces, bringing back lost fauna and flora. An overall water scheme allows for the reuse of all wastewater of the village for public space irrigation and groundwater recharge. The entire project embraced a circular economy model with the reuse of most of its waste, organic waste through a centralized composting center and inorganic waste through a craft cooperative. A detailed guideline booklet outlines sustainable manners to upgrade the village center's existing buildings, old and new, all using local materials such as earth, stone, wood, and reeds. Unlike the norm in Morocco, where new thermal institutions are always high-end and out of reach for most locals, we convinced the region of Gelmim, our client, that we should democratize access to this ancestral spring that locals visit weekly today. Everyone will be welcome in this new thermal complex main pool, but different levels of service will be offered depending on one's budget. We integrated the new thermal complex built with stone masonry from a nearby quarry and compressed earth bricks within a steep hill with only few volumes emerging, echoing the vocabulary of the local villages nearby. This allowed the spring water to be used and reach the oasis irrigation system by gravity. This project demonstrates that Aziza Chaouni project, my office, intervenes beyond research and design, where also community organizers and lobbyists. In addition to ecotourism, one of my most significant contributions to addressing scarcity in arid regions is my research project, Out of Water, Design Solutions for Arid Climates, co-led with my colleague at the Daniels Faculty, Associate Professor Liat Margolis. Both born and raised in arid countries, we sought to develop a toolkit for designers to address scarcity within their projects. Based on 5 years of research, the preparation of and feedback on a traveling exhibition, as well as a major conference, the results of the Out of Water project are presented in a series of case studies and essays by international experts, including analytical drawings of both projected and existing solutions. We developed an analytical matrix by which we analyze each project's performance and energy consumption with the support of detailed drawings. Our most potent conclusions to address water scarcity within the design disciplines included first the integration of ancestral knowledge and technologies from other fields, such as agriculture, into design, and secondly, the necessity to completely rethink our centralized water system and its outdated single plumbing approach, along with reimagining landscapes and buildings to capture, store, treat, and distribute water to make every single drop of water count. As part of the project, we invited a dozen architects to apply this principle in designs for a water-scarce tomorrow. You can see here like a utopian vision of a future town on the Arizona desert, and on the right, a utopian or dystopian future by Jimenez Lai, very Dune-like, imagining a bodysuit that would recycle your own urine. So in my own practice, I would say that my most significant contribution to this stream are the Fes River Project and the Jodour Sahara Music School, which both won Holcim Awards for Sustainable Construction. The Fes River Project included the depollution and uncovering of the river that crosses the UNESCO World Heritage City of Fez, which had become an open-air sewer. And due to time constraints, I will not dwell into this project today, unfortunately, but you can listen to my TED Talk about it, which you can find on YouTube. But instead, I will focus on the Jodour Sahara project, which is actually extremely dear to my heart. It started as an NGO that I co-founded by luck in 2016 with other foreign and local partners that offers free music, dance, and environmental awareness classes to around 1,200 children and youth living in the oasis of Hamid El Ghizlan, located at the very end of the UNESCO biosphere, the Oasis Valley of the Dra in southern Morocco. Hamid is terribly affected by drought and climate change, and its centuries-old cultural, architectural, and agricultural heritage is declining, literally being swallowed by advancing sand dunes. Actually, based on my experience, sand dunes would advance by about 1 meter each year. Hamid's exceptional culture is a mix of Saharan, Berber, Hassani, and Sub-Saharan cultures, and has a vast and diverse repertoire of dance and music. A perfect illustration of what I refer to as slow architecture, like slow food, the project proves Cedric Price right. The solution was not architecture space at first. Instead, the school's curriculum, training, and instruments, as well as the collection and translation of traditional songs and dances, was first reestablished. Then we tested various anti-desertification techniques over a decade with our partner, the NGO Sahara Roots, using the water box system, which you can see here, which is a simple recycled plastic device which provides roots with only the right amount of water that they require. Combined with tamarack trees whose roots stabilize soil, and palm tree leaves matrix planted with succulent plants. The combination of these systems has proven successful, achieving a 75% survival rate for tamarack trees after 3 years compared to 30% with usual drip irrigation. This system, which you can see in full blossom here, you can see my son also that was helping fixing the water pipe, is now approved and disseminated by ONZOA, Morocco's Oasis branch at the Ministry of Forestry. Our ambition is to carefully assess this experiment in an academic setting with the hope to improve and spread it to other African countries bordering the Sahara. When it came time to expand the school due to its growing success, we proposed a new campus at the edge of the oasis so that its architecture could also act as a rampart against advancing sand dunes. We led a series of workshops with the music school students, the teacher, local craftsmen, musicians, etc. And the final design was composed by a series of rammed earth buildings oriented against the dominant winds, with the large barrier of our anti-desertification system, as well as guest bedrooms that act together with this system to stop sand dunes from advancing. So architecture and landscape working hand in hand. A thorough analysis of locally available material and skills helps us choose a material palette using primarily rammed earth, compressed earth, brick, stone, lime, acacia wood, clay, and reeds, all sourced within a 50-kilometer radius and not an ounce of concrete. Indeed, all our buildings are constructed with stone foundations of 80-centimeter thick rammed earth walls, acacia beams and lintels, and traditional roofing with reeds and clay. The space above an underground water reservoir acts as a naturally cooled classroom thanks to the holes at the bottom of its benches. A urine separating compost toilet provides irrigation for non-edible trees and compost for all our gardens. And an outdoor sunken auditorium that you can see here that was not fully complete in this photo acts as a water collector and feeds into our water reservoir. The earth bricks were placed so as to improve the acoustics of the space. Here it is, you can see it's almost complete. Further investigations in construction-arid climates include the recently completed Meknes dorm in Morocco for the French Education Abroad Agency with its ventilated southern, eastern, and western facades, composed of 30,000 compressed earth bricks containing only 4.5% of cement, using the specific mix by Lafarge Holcim called the Durabrick mix. And a custom-made metallic structural system connects the vertical brick to the building's main facade, so it creates a double ventilated facade. So this CEB, so compressed earth brick facade, is only part of an arsenal of passive techniques used to keep the dorm rooms cool during the hottest month of the year, including solar chimneys for hot air extraction and solar-powered fans and vents located on the main facade, which is facing south. The building has become a pedagogical tool for students and teachers, demonstrating that living without air conditioning in Morocco is indeed possible. Another project in the stream is the Craft Exhibition Center, located in the town of Ifran, known as the Little Switzerland of Morocco. Originally a ski resort built by the French in the Atlas Mountains amid the second largest cedar forest reserve in the world, the small town now faces skyrocketing temperatures and lack of snow, losing many of its winter tourists and its original vocation. In its urban center, abandoned buildings abound. When asked to demolish a derelict 1926 bus station to build the Craft Exhibition Center for new summer tourists, we challenged the brief and proposed instead retaining the original stone building that you can see here. We repurposed it by adding a new program needed by the community, in addition to the Craft Center, a women's cooperative to sell bread. They were selling it, outside, under the rain and under the weather. So with a budget equivalent to around $60,000 US, we made minimal yet precise modifications. We added a mezzanine atop an existing beam matrix and opened up the ground floor and main facade towards the plaza and park and equipped them with cedar slats, brise soleil for protection, and built flexible display furniture. We collaborated with the Ministry of Forests and the nearby Ifran National Park to produce the slats from collapsed cedar trees located on remote parts of the park, which were usually stolen or sold for fuel. Thanks to this project, this part of town was revived and activity returned during the daytime. And even during nighttime, where we don't see that many people here, but they are. And in addition, a dozen of unemployed women also found jobs, and we initiated a new sustainable reuse program with the Ifran National Park, with the proceeds supporting some of the park operation. And I want to end this section with my most recent contribution to this stream, which is the anti-seismic prototype house, completed as a volunteer effort with a team of Moroccan engineers and with the generous support of Lafarge in Morocco. So in the aftermath of the 2023 Moroccan earthquake that left about 3,000 people dead, I knew that permanent housing solutions should be proposed sooner than later, as winters in these regions of Morocco can be very harsh because it does snow there. And so with few of my Moroccan engineer colleagues, we decided to volunteer to help the Moroccan government develop an anti-seismic, affordable and sustainable housing prototype. So we started first by establishing sustainable design guidelines, including material and of energy types to be used. And we then proceeded to analyze the morphology of villages from the region and houses that blend seamlessly, you can see here, and beautifully with the landscape. And we came up with a 150 meter square courtyard house. I don't know how much that is in feet, sorry. Aiming to fit the government price tag of about $14,000 per home, while suiting local lifestyles and being anti-seismic and sustainable. So we imagined the house to evolve over time and also provided plans for different options to expand also in the section of the patio of our house. And for ease of implementation, the house is composed of 3 modules of similar sizes. So we used a collaborative approach with specifically designed tools to engage with the survivors of the village where this prototype was going to be built. And these workshops helped us adjust the final layout of the house. And we did find out actually that the typical house had only 1 courtyard, but that the need of the local population today exceeded only 1 courtyard. And the house actually has 4 different courtyards, each one used for a different function: cooking, hosting guests, having of animals, and also drying your wet clothes. And so the house was entirely built using 3 types of compressed earth bricks that we designed specifically for the project. So there is one that's the Lego type, so literally like a Lego. It doesn't require any mortar for the walls, arched for the ceiling, and full for the floor. And like I mentioned before, the brick were composed of 95% earth and 4.5% cement. And we are currently patenting the arch CEB model, which you can see here. And so something also to keep in mind is our original plan was to produce these bricks on site with a press. It worked very well, in the lab, but on site they were very poor quality, so we ended up having to do them in a factory. And finally, also you can see, at the bottom of the test. At the beginning, we thought that we need to put reinforcement in of every hole, but after some more calculations, we only have reinforcement at every 1.5 meter. And what is, exciting is that a comparative, analysis institute did conclude that with an improved prototype using the new brick, we can further lower the cost of the house to $12,000. And at last, here are some photos of the final house with the 2 lucky ladies that now are living there. Here it is. There it is again. So you can see some of the bricks that we wanted to be seen that we left without a plaster. The kitchen and the small kitchen courtyard. The interior, you can see the arched bricks that rest on the wood beams on the ceiling. So now, let me move to my second theme, post-colonial modern heritage rehabilitation and adaptive reuse in Africa. So this interest stemmed from a pragmatic observation. The scarcity of public amenities in African cities coexists with an available, sturdy and stellar building stock from the post-independence era, mostly owned by the government and states, and often abandoned or underutilized, and most importantly, in relatively good condition, despite their lack of maintenance. Many of these buildings are exceptional and reflect a precocious architectural exploration of sustainable approaches. And after the Second World War, a newly independent African states commissioned public architectural works to advance the crafting of new national identities and to assert the economic and cultural progress on the international stage. A geographically rooted modernism emerged as a new language and an experimental ground that advanced political, cultural, and aesthetic notions of contemporaneity in the region. Notably, some extraordinary public building complexes and landscapes were erected, championing passive cooling systems, the use of local materials, and the reinterpretation of vernacular forms and patterns, alongside the rationalist design approach and extensive use of exposed concrete. Despite their significance, the in-depth documentation and analysis of buildings from this era remain scarce today, as academic efforts and research funding have very often focused on studying the vernacular or the colonial periods. Research on this neglected topic is even more salient today because of the looming demolition risk that are there and that might erase these landmarks of modern buildings and erase them from the collective memory. And second, because of the pressing need for public amenities in African cities. So how do we retrofit these buildings with limited budget and local expertise in modern heritage rehabilitation? How do we address disapproval of these buildings, often judged as passé, obsolete, ugly, or monsters by the public and decision makers? And most importantly, what methods and research opportunities relevant to the global north context can emerge from this rehabilitation and adaptive reuse projects? So I am fortunate to be working on the long-term rehabilitation of 3 major post-colonial modern landmarks as applied research projects, thanks to the seed funds from the Getty Foundation, Keeping It Modern Grant, and the NGO World Monuments Fund, and the US State Department. Actually, not anymore. That last grant was cut off last March. That's another story. So the Sidi Harazem Thermal Complex is one of them, the International Fair of Dakar, and the Maison du Peuple in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso. So all 3 projects embody different trajectories defined by their social political context, but they share several similarities. Morocco, Senegal, and Burkina Faso are all Francophone countries in West Africa with historic, economic, and cultural and diasporic ties to France. Each site had limited available archival documentation, and they all represent a form of situated modernism, blending the international style with local vernacular architecture. Today, each site houses activities different from what the architect originally intended in those parts still in use, while others are simply abandoned, unfortunately. And each project is currently in a different state of progress, with 2 having their conservation management plan completed and approved, and rehabilitation has started, however, very slowly due to COVID. And I treat all 3 sites as an experimental ground to test new approaches to conservation and adaptive reuse from the master plan scale to the material and repair scale. So let me start by actually explaining the very unusual genesis of this project. So they were all self-initiated, with technical teams assembled, coalition formed, lobbying done to convince governmental bodies to embark on their rehab, local schools involved with curriculum building and institute training, funding raised and relationship built with renowned international institutions, providing financial support and expertise. I stress this aspect because it highlights a departure from the usual norm of praxis and applied research in the global north, one that necessitates intense and sustained activist efforts, often at the transnational scale. Similarly, new conservation methodologies must be developed to address the difficult conditions that all 3 sites share, such as lost archives, development pressures, mixed public perception about modern heritage associated with the colonial and post-colonial era, informal reappropriation by local actors, poor infrastructure, technical challenges, et cetera, et cetera. So to tackle all these difficulties that seem almost like a mission impossible, we develop an approach called the scaffold. The word refers to the qualities it confers to the public site to be rehabilitated. It allows the modern buildings and their infrastructure to act as a skeleton onto which diverse programs and rehabilitation initiatives, either temporary or long-term, could organically and incrementally attach or find a home. In context with shifting political and socioeconomic dynamics and limited funds, this approach seems to be the most suitable. Most importantly, the scaffold is co-designed with local stakeholders to be both resilient and realistic, composed of a series of small-scale, low-budget, easy-to-implement actions, each labeled with the level of urgency based on archival documents demonstrating the architect's original intentions and approach, and the role each item plays in the overall integrity and significance matrix. Our ultimate goal is to build a solid foundation that could outlive the end of the conservation management plan, making every stakeholder, from the small stall owner to the decision maker, ambassadors of the project. There is no turning back after the significance of the building or complex is understood by users. Its loss starts to be seen as irreversible, and decision makers start being held responsible. Hopefully so. So let me illustrate this approach with one of the three projects, the Sidi Harazem Thermal Complex. Located near an oasis where a revered Sufi saint is buried, adjacent to a hot spring, Sidi Harazem was commissioned to Moroccan Corsican architect Jean-François Zevaco 3 years after Morocco's independence in 1959 by the State Pension Fund. It offered the first tourist destination to Moroccans following best practice tourism standards. It included a large shaded public plaza with a public spring, water fountain, a hotel, bungalows, a public forum called the Riyadh, composed of gardens and water bodies, 2 pools, a vegetable market, and a craft market. Zevaco's architecture is exceptional in its poetic integration of nature and water with architecture. Water canals, for example, are carved into stairs. Gravity-fed ponds are interwoven with the central courtyard's garden, and the spring water-fed pool oddly resembles the traditional water catchment strategy of the region called the Sebka. And since childhood, I had visited the thermal complex with my grandmother who suffered from rheumatism, and she swore that after each visit to the saint and after drinking the water and bathing the water, she was pain-free for 3 months. Here you can see me in this photo with her at Sidi Harazem with the oasis in the backdrop. Sadly, I noticed over the years the thermal complex slow decline with the closing down of its central courtyard, bungalows, and craft market. The coup de grace, if I may say, was the Moroccanization of the hotel, where traditional tiles were placed on top of the concrete and informal buildings were added around the pool and the main plaza. So the owner who commissioned the complex to Zevaco is still the same owner, is the State Pension Fund, was about to sell the complex to a Chinese golf course investor for demolition when I approached them to jointly apply for the Gaiety Keeping It Modern grant. So my intervention, probably along with the ridiculous cost of dynamiting such a well-built large concrete complex, probably the latter was the reason, made them change course and give the rehabilitation a chance. So we embarked on a quest across 3 continents from the original architecture drawing of Zevaco complex, which had to assemble them, so to try to find them because they have been dispersed after his death. But we were still missing actually a lot of information on certain buildings. And we didn't know what were the original finishes and the technical drawings were, etc. So we countered the scarcity of information and archives by launching a major social media campaign called the Sidi Harazem Je me souviens, Sidi Harazem that I recall, for which we self-produced capsule videos and asked people to contribute material and memories. So Sidi Harazem being Morocco's first post-independence leisure resort, the campaign garnered a flood of photos, postcards, testimonies, and ancestors of the selfie, and more, all of which helped us understand Zevaco's original design intentions. We used drawings as a tool to document and study the buildings and its structure, such as the suspended concrete staircase designed with a redundant double spring system, we find out, that was hidden in an underground chamber to dampen vibrations. And you can see here one of its beautifully detailed concrete steps that are encased in a metallic ring. So with all collected documentation, we were able to mark all changes and damage, like in the case of the entrance sculpture here, which showcases the palette of the different concretes that Zevaco use throughout the complex. So in parallel to this documentation, we launched a series of consultations with stakeholders, especially those displaced at the construction of the complex. Using various games we designed for different user groups, we developed a master plan that included new and rehabilitated buildings to bring visitors year-round and preserve the site's natural environment, becoming a well-being, a culinary, and modern heritage education center. You can see here the new master plan with Zevaco's buildings in deep orange, and in light orange, the existing buildings, and in green, our proposed new buildings. We then returned to the drawing board to design the new buildings with a sustainable approach, such as the new market that has a very large canopy that would house the store owners, and to address the decreasing levels of the spring water that fed Zevaco's extensive waterworks. The entire water system of the complex was reconfigured as a closed-loop system that filters and reuses water, including gray water from the hotel and the bungalows. Additionally, we conducted the foundation and concrete composition analysis to understand the constituents of the 5 types of concrete mixes Zevaco used for different effects. And we tested corroded rebar replacement and concrete repair solutions with epoxy and acrylic resin techniques. So those techniques which did not perform well and which I hope to improve upon soon. So to start the rehabilitation of the complex, we provided temporary stalls that were actually occupying informally parts of the complex with a temporary market, and we reused OSB boards that were discarded by the city after a temporary fair, as seen here, completed. Unfortunately, COVID delayed our progress on the actual rehabilitation, and then the government decided to spend the money on something else. But we turned to another approach, the approach of cultural activation, by organizing artist residencies and musical and dance events to keep the site dynamic and demonstrate that throughout minimal intervention, it can host events and programs. What's funny is that thanks to the Soccer World Cup, which Morocco is co-hosting in 2030, the project is getting back on track. And I hope to propose novel and affordable methods soon to repair the concrete that can also withstand high temperature differential. So that's my own personal goal. So the Sidi Harazim experience precipitated a series of other modern rehabilitation projects in West Africa and back in Toronto, like the Future of Ontario Place project, led with the World Monuments Fund, which attempt to safeguard and reuse a beautiful 1970s megastructure built literally on top of Lake Ontario, countering a provincial government that wants to demolish the complex and which unfortunately is demolishing it as we speak. So we followed, for this project, you can actually go to its website if you want to look at the work we've done, a similar approach as the one developed in a global south country in Morocco, in Sidi Harazim, mixing a campaign to collect documents, collaborative design, and in-depth research. The research and advocacy for the project are all compiled on this website. So I would like to end here with this rendering of the main plaza of Sidi Harazim, and I hope that you've enjoyed, understanding better my approach and looking at all of these different projects set in context of scarcity. Thank you so much for your attention. Oh, yeah, sure. Okay.
Great. So folks, we'll have a question and answer session. Would anybody like to begin? Happy to hand the mic to anyone with a question. Great.
I was really interested in the participatory processes you used with your clients in design and code design. But I wondered if you could tell us more about that process when your client is a nomadic population.
I think that's a very, very good point. And especially that we found out that about 50 to 60% of that population could not read or write. And so we actually used drawing, as a technique. We involved them in doing the little storyboards of what they did over their entire day. So we gave them small booklet and we asked them to draw different, activities that they've done from morning to night. It worked for certain people. For others, they felt, I don't know how to draw. And so then we asked them, so they all had cell phones. So we asked them to take photos instead. So that was like another approach. And finally, not just with the nomadic tribes, but also with in other sites, because the rate of literacy varies in Morocco between 40 to 60%, depending on the region. 40 is very large, unfortunately. So when we did questionnaires, we used pictograms instead of text, because very often if you hand in a form to somebody who doesn't know how to read and write, they would feel very threatened. But if you showed little drawings or a comic book format, etc., they felt that it was more accessible. But to be honest, the biggest challenge was not the literacy, but it was to gather trust. And I think that's the case even in the global north and in the global south, even the more so because the local population is not used to be asked their opinion. They would just wake up one morning, find that there's some construction happening, and they don't know exactly what it is or where it's going to start or end, what it's going to provide for them. Often, sadly, amenities that they might not need. And so the biggest challenge was to build that trust. And what this different project allowed us to do, because they were in a way self-initiated with me and other colleagues and other entities, so we're able to get funds for them. We had the luxury of time. And what I find very often in the Global North and in other projects, clients are not willing to take the time, especially at the beginning. They might accept to have a consultation at the end when the design is there to say, okay, so let's see now if people like it and what can be changed. But the honest truth is that this process leads to very little change, or I would say superficial changes. We say, look, we moved this tree, but the actual program, the actual architecture is actually not really co-designed or affected by the stakeholders' opinion. That's from my experience. I don't know how you experience here in DC. Yes?
This is that Ontario place there. Are you involved?
Give me the mic so that we, yeah.
Are you involved with the project, the plan to shut down the Ontario Science Center and move it to Ontario Place, and also the Therma Baths proposal for there? I'm just wondering.
I am part of a group called Ontario Place for All that is fighting this decision. That's why actually we developed this project, because so what I didn't mention is that the provincial government behind closed doors handed the project to a company called Term, who does indoor water parks on an amazing site that already has beaches and is accessible to everyone. So basically is to hand in the site to a developer, to a company that would make it private, and you need to pay to enter, to be in an indoor water park and built on top of a heritage complex. So just to tell you that Ontario Place is, I would say, probably the only mega structure from the 70s that was built and completed on water. And it's composed of different pods that were supposed to grow on the Lake Ontario, exactly like the project of the Tokyo Bay that was designed by Kurakawa was meant to be. So, I mean, for a city that has the only mega structure built on water in the world as a heritage piece, for them to propose this site to a developer to make an indoor water park, to privatize a waterfront, is terrible. But unfortunately, in more and more cities, we see that this phenomenon is happening. And the Science Center, which is an amazing heritage building by Moriyama and Teshima, was decided to be closed for no specific reason so that condos could be built there. And at a very high cost taken on our tax money, it's going to come here and to be rebuilt on a site after we demolish another heritage. So you demolish a heritage to build condos, and you move the building to make a new building on top of a heritage complex. So it makes absolutely no sense. The carbon footprint is ridiculous. And I just let you to your own conclusions why this is happening.
Hi, I just wanted to ask a quick question about the post-colonial architecture you mentioned that was part of your research.
Yes.
In my own individual research, I've noticed a lot of carryovers from the colonial time where a lot of building practices and material choices are being carried over from that time period even today. Could you talk about more about the challenges that come with trying to return some of that ancestral knowledge into the building practices today and how that looked like in more detail?
Yeah, sure. Like actually after studying this building, so when I speak about the post-colonial modern movement, it's from the 60s and 70s. So when you look at this building from outside, you think, oh, it's a normal modern building, or it's just a transplant of a Western modernist of brutalist building onto like an African context. But when you start to study them a little bit more, you find out that they actually integrated a lot of vernacular systems of passive cooling because they have no other choice, right? But in a very smart manner, in Sidi Harazem, the use of mosaic, of wood, of copper. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to talk about it, but the reinvention of the patio and of the courtyard in many different typologies. This main plaza itself that has a system of 3 canopies, one on top of the other, is creating this light effect that's very similar to an oasis. So what appears at first glance as being just a transplantation or a copycatting of Western vocabulary was actually very carefully crafted. The use of water in Vivaco in a very smart manner to create this microclimate. I think this was a very specific period. My argument is that this approach should feed and should inspire the contemporary forms of architecture today, at least in the African context that I know, which today tends to copycat the glass tower, even though I've been in office buildings where suddenly the electricity would be cut off. The windows are sealed, it's all in glass. And after 15 minutes, people were fainting and falling down. People were, kind of taking off their clothes. I mean, imagine when outside temperature is 40 degrees Celsius. So I do think that, over time with postmodernism, 60s and 90s, and this desire to look modern, to copy the West, has led the architectural, let's say, discipline in Africa and in West Africa in particular, which I know astray, unfortunately. And my argument is that a careful study of the 60s and 70s buildings could teach us a lot.
Great. Any further questions? Anyone? Oh, well, Aziza, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
You want to mention that we will have a reception for Aziza in the great space beginning at 5:30. So please join us there if you want to continue the conversation with her.
Thank you for coming, everyone.
Yes. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.